We see what others can't. We review what others won't. Let's talk about The Accountant too.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back live with the Storm Podcast. So, today we are going to be discussing or debating Accountant 2. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is, movie recommendation time. So, guys, best recent thing that we've seen.
So, the best thing I saw this week was The Departed, which is a 2006 crime thriller by Martin Scorsese. I'd heard of The Departed many times, and it was kind of on the list of great movies I should see one day, but nobody's ever really given me a specific reason to watch it. Everybody just said how great it was, but not necessarily what it was about or why it was so great. And so kind of put it on more or less at random one evening, and it's pretty amazing. So it's essentially the story of this corrupt cop who informs for the Boston mob, and a cop who goes undercover in the same mob, and they essentially become antagonists, and they engage in this cat and mouse game where they try to kind of out each other before they get killed. And the entire thing is a very tightly acted, tightly written character drama about identity and trust and purpose and right and wrong. And like normally those are very broad themes where I kind of roll my eyes a little bit, where that's kind of film student stuff, right? If somebody says, oh, make a movie about identity, but actually this one really does it properly, because everybody in this movie is playing a role and has a real identity and is playing multiple roles at the same time. And they kind of have to manage how they're perceived by other people. And if they get it wrong, they might get killed. So it's very high stakes. It's very cutthroat. And it's just all around a good time. So that's my recommendation for the week.
Great.
I watched The Last of Us season 2, and there's a big moment that happens in the game which has already happened in season 2, and I thought they absolutely nailed it. I thought it was sort of perfect. The emotion that they captured within it, the intensity, the sort of the just like the feeling of anguish and stuff like that they captured in the episode was brilliantly handled. I know there's a lot of controversy around the second game of The Last of Us. I know there's a lot of controversy around the decisions that they made in it, but to kind of like follow the story along from season 1 to season 2 of The Last of Us, and sort of the acts of like revenge and vengeance and this, that, and the other. I feel like they've sort of handled it so far in 3 episodes really well. It's going to be very interesting to see how the story plays out. So again, I'm a person that played Last of Us Part 1, know that story, but didn't quite play Part 2. So wasn't part of the sort of online outrage of that. So I'm kind of just following the story from, I'd say not fresh eyes, because I know the controversy, but someone that isn't as emotionally scarred from what happened in the game, and is just sort of allowing the season to play out. So yeah, just kind of looking forward to seeing how the plot develops from here.
Is that the controversy where they have some gay people in it, or is that a different controversy? Or was that season 1?
That was season 1. No, the controversy is about the choice that they make with a character, and everyone hated the choice they made with the character. And do I spoil it? Spoiler alert!
No.
I don't. Oh, you don't hear it? Okay, all right, never mind.
I haven't watched season 2 yet. No, I'm gonna work.
So can you just say very broadly, like just in very broad terms, like did they actually change the character for the better and people are upset about it? Did they change it for the worse?
No, this is a controversy that stems from the game. Like the moment happened in the game, and now it's being acted out in season 2, and it was very controversial at the time. In the game at the time, decision to make around the character, around the characters involved in it, etc. Everyone completely hated it. Everyone kind of threw their toys out of the pram for the decision that they made around it.
Oh, so they stuck to the source
So
material.
there's no controversy around how it plays out in episode 2, because by this point everyone knows what's going to happen and everyone knows what the story is. But it's just interesting to kind of like see it play out in sort of a series format compared to sort of a video game format where it seems like everyone was very attached to. Yeah, okay. I don't want to say too much without spoiling. But
and presumably in the game you have the ability to make another choice.
No.
And here you don't.
In the game, the developers made the choice, and no one liked the developers' choice. Very much.
I see. Okay.
Well, what I saw was a Netflix series called Unseen. It's a South African series, I believe. It's about a cleaner who pretty much goes on a hunt looking for her husband who was incarcerated over a murder which he gave himself up on. But then you end up finding, I'm not going to say what happens and if he committed the murder or not, but then there's a whole mystery behind him confessing to him. Like, pretty much the wife doesn't believe that he actually killed the person and they accuse him of, that he confessed to killing. And then as she kind of like uncovers the truth while searching for her husband, she just gets in a deeper hole. And you start to kind of like see that the wife's got like underlying anger issues. Not underlying anger issues, because there is trauma behind her anger, which obviously you'll find out why, mainly to do with her son, who, okay, I'm not going to say what happened to her son, but yeah, you'll find out once you watch the series and uncovering the truth after each episode. But yeah, it was a good series. I had a fun time with it. I was surprised. I was just kind of, because I watched a lot of stuff, so I was just looking through like things I wouldn't normally watch, and then when I watched this one, I was like, okay, it was good. It was good. Yeah, I'd recommend this one. Okay, it looks like it's time for the main event. Accountant 2. Danny G, may you please do the honors of giving us a little synopsis.
So, The Accountant 2 is a action thriller film about a neurodivergent accountant who acts as an accountant for the mob and is also trained as a hitman. The story essentially picks up some years after the events of the first movie and begins where a government official gets a tip from the accountant that leads her on an investigation that leads to South America, to the cartels, into a case involving human trafficking. She then recruits the accountant and his brother for help, and the plot unfolds from there. So what did we think of The Accountant 2?
I'd say this was a pleasant experience in the cinema, but it's a very flawed movie, and it's not a great movie at all. And I feel like it's the good elements of the movie, which is the dynamic between the accountant and his brother, and some of the character interactions between them, really carry the movie for me. And you could have really taken out the action element of it, and we could have just gone on this road trip with these two guys, and I feel like I probably would have had a better movie from that, because for me everything around the plot just kind of like falls apart to a point where I was like, what's going on? Like, it just kind of it kind of felt like a lot of things were just kind of like thrown together. The difference between the accountant in this movie versus the previous one is that it seemed like he had a lot more in terms of like dealing with the plot and dealing with what was happening in the first movie. It seemed like he was like relying a lot more on his neurodivergent skills in that first movie to actually solve the issue. And in here there are elements of it. There are kind of like moments of it where he does some accounting for a guy that runs a shop, and then kind of like beats him up afterwards, beats him up and his bodyguards or whatever. But there wasn't too much of it here. There was like an over reliance on this Harvard Academy to kind of find all the answers and solve all the mysteries of what was going on. I never really loved that in movies where you just kind of like tap at a keyboard and then you have all the answers, or you tap at a keyboard and you're easily hacking into places. So, a lot of that was falling flat for me. But again, the reason I had a pleasant experience was just because of the characters in this movie, really, really and truthfully, because the story was pretty bare thin. I think it was like very run of the mill, very bog standard. A lot of it just kind of didn't make sense or didn't really mesh well for me. So it was just a bit like, okay, cool. I enjoyed seeing these two interact in the movie, and that was pretty much my experience with it.
For me, I felt like I actually had a very good time with Account 2. I think in terms of the story, it felt like it was a natural progression. Even though the storyline was generic, I don't think with just like with the sequel, like with like just the movie in general, even with Accountant 1, I don't think it was meant to have like a compelling story. I do understand that he was unique, obviously, because of his neurodivergent, and obviously they relied upon that and they used that as it was used as a weapon of his, right? Because I'm saying, he thinks different from others. But evil, like for me personally, in terms of Accountant 1 and 2, I don't think it's having a compelling story was the main focus. I think it was character motivation and obviously the action scenes. And with this one, it was obviously the relationship between the two brothers, which was another element to the film, which was pretty much the attracting factor to the film. So I think overall, I think it made sense. I think the progression in the film made sense because they already laid the foundation with Accountant One. You know what I'm saying, with the first film. So with this film, it kind of made sense to go in the direction it did, where it was just mainly, relationship focused between the brother and just action, just pure fun. So I think them, them I don't think they could have made a compelling story out of this. However, I'm not mad at them not doing it because the alternative of what I got was a fun time, and it was seeing, two brothers who are as deadly as each other rekindling, obviously not getting along, but obviously they got along at the end, but just rebuilding that relationship. So I had a fun time with the angle that they chose to go with this one.
So I had not seen the first Accountant movie, so these were new characters for me, and I kind of needed to catch up as to who these people were and what the rules of this world were. I think the movie does a decent job at explaining who people are and what their deal is. I just did not necessarily have the best time with the actual story. So the story itself is simultaneously very simple and very complicated, where there's a lot of steps and a lot of moving parts, but what it amounts to is not that much, right? So ultimately, it's about like cartels in South America. They're trafficking people. They're holding children hostage as leverage, and we kind of track them down and we kill them. And that's the plot. The actual action itself is competent but unexciting. Pretty much the only appeal in this is how like efficient these two brothers are in terms of their violence, but nothing like none of the set pieces really show very much creativity or something where I said, okay, this is really something I've not seen before, or this is done really well or whatever. It's just fine. It's good, and that's kind of what this all comes down to. I think the highlight of this was the relationship between the brothers, which it seems like would be richer if you've seen the first movie, but based on what we got in this movie, and I kind of understood what their relationship was like and what they had to get over to really be a family and stuff like that, and that was probably the best part. So overall, I was kind of underwhelmed, but not offended. Let's talk about it.
Okay, I can't even ask how did the film compare to the first one because Daniel, you said you haven't. Have you? Did you watch? You didn't watch it, right?
I've not seen the first one. I tried. It's not on any of the streamers. Yeah, so I watched the trailer and like 2 scenes, and it seems to be a very different movie. A lot less action focused and more kind of on the method of the accountant. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my impression that I got from watching a couple of scenes. Yeah. So it seemed to be stylistically not very close to the original.
From what I can remember, like I said, I think they just laid the foundation for the way that it was. But I always remembered that accountant as something just fun. I don't think it was a film that was gonna have like a complex storyline. It's kind of similar. I don't want to compare it to like a Jason Statham film, but it kind of does follow I don't want to say similar format because I think the driving force of the plot in this one is way different in comparison to Jason Statham films. But
it's a stoic badass guy shoots bad people movie.
Yeah,
like how different can they be?
No, true. But I think Jason. What I meant was Jason Statham's films are pretty much way more like generic to the point where it's fun for me, but I understand how it's not fun for many other people. But yeah, so I'm not gonna kind of ask about comparisons with the first film. So, but how did you feel about the central conflict in this film? Like, was it compelling enough that kept you engaged?
What was the central conflict in this for you? Because there's a couple.
There is a couple. I think the central one of the conflicts is obviously between the brother. Another one was with the boy. Obviously, the Ben Affleck's character's like his motivations behind why he wants to save the boy. Because obviously he was a reflection of himself.
That wasn't clear in the movie. I don't know. Did I miss that? Why he knew that this boy was different and special in whatever way? Because I was very confused about how all of a sudden this boy fit into this like whatever academy, I can't remember what it's called, but whatever academy that he had kind of going
Harvard Academy or something.
He just had a similar
like Harvard Academy.
He just had a similar story.
Okay. I get what they were trying to do in terms of sort of making them similar, but in terms of being a little bit different, Ben Affleck's character in this had his condition, which sort of made him a little bit more sort of kind of like socially awkward and sort of good with numbers, etc. But I don't know how
we're doing an autism is a superpower story in 2025.
Yeah,
that was awkward 15 years ago when Alphas did it. Any of you ever see Alphas?
No, I haven't.
Alphas was a superhero show around 2010-11. It was essentially about people with unique abilities, and basically about this guy who kind of collects them to make them a team, and then they fight crime. One of the characters has magic autism, where he can see the internet and he can manipulate it. And that was weird back in 2011, and we're doing it again. So there was a little bit like, I'm not offended by it. It's more like this got past people. I'm just more surprised than anything.
But I feel again, I think you're somewhat correct in your observation about the first movie, where that was a lot of the focus of it. And again, that's that's the first movie, and the whole premise is about this person who's an accountant but was also a bit of a badass as well. And I just felt like they handled it a lot better in the first movie, and kind of like showcased it a lot better than what they had in the second movie.
He does it once here.
In
the entire movie, he does it once.
He doesn't,
and that was cool. Like showcases his power, showcases his ability to do numbers, because when the guy's like rattling about his business and the numbers of like the business, etc., you feel like the guy knows about the business. You feel like he knows how he's running the business, but the whole time the accountant has figured out, I can't remember exactly what it was, but essentially you're like money laundering, because you're saying you're making this much or whatever, and like this costs whatever amount, this is how much you should be taking home. But
there was a discrepancy between how many pizzas the guy claimed to have sold and how many pizza boxes he had ordered.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Basically saying there was something like there was like a 30% difference, and that was the clue, like that he was kind of like had other income streams and was just declaring it as sales. I had a couple of problems with that. So first of all, this whole idea of like, this guy is so good with numbers that he can just dig into the numbers and find the truth. That's cool by itself. And I have a feeling that if I saw the first movie, it sounds like there's more of that there. And here it's just in this one scene. But here it's also just a magic trick, right? There's no clues you can follow. There's no, like, we don't see Christian actually do the work. We don't see him figure things out. He just shows up with a perfect solution. And while that is kind of fun to watch, like him go into like explainer mode and to kind of catch the guy like in his own logic, it's kind of fun if you don't think so hard about it. But like, there's no progression there. There's no story there, right? It's just like it comes out of nowhere, and it's just a done deal, and it's just a plot point. So that I kind of felt it was kind of unsatisfying on that level. Like, if there was like a whole progression about, okay, we need to kind of catch this business in a lie. And so he kind of digs into the evidence and finds patterns and interviews people, and over time, like, doesn't have to be the whole movie, right? But over the course of a sequence, he kind of assembles this case and finds connections that nobody else can. And they kind of did this work kind of with the, when Medina has this evidence board on the wall, right, with the photos, and he rearranges it because he sees connections that she doesn't. That at least kind of made sense, because it's just a different way of looking at the same data. And that was much more satisfying than when it's just a magic trick.
But that scene for me kind of did make sense, though, because his role before in the first movie was pretty much, he was the guy that was like sanitizing the whole fraudulent financial behavior, right? Fraudulent financial behavior. So in that scene, it's not that he had the answer. He was looking for the answer. Like, he already knew that, like, he was looking for the truth. He knew that, obviously he sussed out that, okay, because within his profession, he sussed out that, okay, there's some fraudulent business going on, but why is there fraudulent business going on? That's why, he ended up breaking the guy's arm. So that scene did make sense for me.
The logic makes sense, but it's just a done deal. He just presents it. There's no figuring it out.
What happened before that?
Nothing.
What brought them there?
Like, again, no, I think what kind of Daniel's getting at, and what I agree with, is that you want to bring your audience along for the ride in terms of not uncovering the mystery, because it's not like a big mystery, but it's like you said, you're sort of taking your time, you're interrogating, you're collecting the evidence, you're doing this, that, and the other, and you're following the steps, as opposed to someone that's just done all of this in his head. And I get that in the first movie he's presented to be super intelligent and really good with numbers, but you kind of want to see that develop still. You want to see more of that in action, as opposed to, okay, in the first movie we established that he's good with numbers. Now he's just going to automatically do it everywhere on the spot. Like, he didn't take it away, didn't whatever. I literally did it on the spot, and we were like, okay, cool. We just kind of have to accept it, and it's just like, fine, I guess. And it was like cool to see him do it, but it's just like, it's not like Daniel said, it's not super satisfying. And the other times that he did use those sort of his abilities with numbers was, of course, in the dating scene at the very start, when he kind of like rearranges the algorithm for them and sort of optimizes his profile to sort of get all the matches in the room. And then the other time that I actually kind of thought was actually
can we go back? Can we stay on the dating scene for a second?
Yeah, go shoot.
Because he did not optimize the algorithm. He just maximized the number of hits, but they were all bad matches.
Yeah.
Right? There was no good match in there. He just matched with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just literally played the system to see what would get the most clicks and what would basically, like you said, optimize it to sort of get his profile to be the most optimal so that he was able to get all the matches.
So that was just, he basically thought it's not about finding the perfect person, it's trying to get as many matches as possible. So he fixed the algorithm to do that. So he just doesn't get it. He just doesn't get what dating is for.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can kind of tie it down to his like social awkwardness, because again, he probably finds it a little bit difficult to have conversations with women, or finds it difficult to sort of initially sort of speak to them or whatever. So that he then, and probably the way that he was like looking at his profile the first time round wasn't efficient enough for him to get any matches to experiment with. So he was like, okay, let me just cast the widest net. Basically, it seemed like he was just like casting the widest net and then seeing what he caught from that.
It's just, I don't think it quite holds up, because he should want to skip the awkward conversations and go straight to the perfect match.
Which is true, yeah. Which I agree, yeah. I agree, yeah. He should be optimizing it to match what his sort of thing is.
It's kind of a fun scene, right? As you're watching it, and then it's a bit like fast food, right? Like you're enjoying it while it happens, and afterward, like right after, you say, "Oh, this was not a good idea."
Yeah.
Right? At least that was my reading of it, because like it's I don't know, unless he's just so literal minded that he thinks more hits is better. But like he's smart enough to, I don't know, but it was kind of fun to kind of, when they catch him and they realize what he's done and who they're dealing with. That was kind of fun, but I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that scene was because obviously he's trying something new. So yeah, logically you would have thought he would have manipulated the system in a way where he'll find his perfect match. However, he was trying something different. So it does, for me, it fitted. Not perfectly, but it fitted well with obviously the intention of it.
Yeah, it's just he doesn't generate good matches.
Yeah, well,
and he doesn't seem to have a plan once he has the matches.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he didn't think that far.
But shouldn't he? If he's that smart,
he should.
Yeah, he should.
Yeah.
But you keep.
I was gonna say, it kind of speaks to online dating in terms of like presenting your best self, and I feel like that was that in this movie. I'm trying to remember. Like I kind of watched this a few days ago, but in that instance, he was like trying to present what he thought people would like and what he thought would be accepted by most other people, so that he can get as many matches.
Yep.
And I can't remember, and I'm forgetting this movie a little bit, but I can't remember if there was a moment where he kind of accepts himself, and I think him and his brother kind of like go through sort of similar journeys of sort of accept himself and accept.
I was going to get to that.
Go for it.
Like the entire movie is about finding your people, right? Like Christian and Braxton kind of realize they should be family, but they've never gotten along, and by the end of the movie, they kind of have enough of a rapport to get along. Meanwhile, Braxton keeps trying to get a pet. And he keeps thinking he should get a dog because that's what people do. And then he never quite works out for him. And then it's pointed out to him that a dog would be a terrible fit for him. And so he finds this random cat on the side of the road in Mexico, or where it was. Then you've got the Anchor Academy, which is all about these neurodivergent people finding each other and finding a purpose away from the judgment of society and in a way where they can make the rules, and that's what makes them excel. You've got the migrants, right, who are trying to become Americans, and they kind of fall into like open themselves up to exploitations from the traffickers because of that. But there's kind of at least a sense of like community and solidarity between them, and so that's again finding your people, knowing who to know, like trying to find people you can trust in that situation. But like the entire movie is, and Medina also tries to find people who she can work with, right? Like she tries to work with Christian, and that works fairly well, and with Braxton it doesn't really work. So like there's this whole thing about finding people you can relate to and kind of work with, right, or like function with, right? And that the whole dating scene kind of falls into that, which is like a clumsy attempt where Christian is doing that because he thinks he should, but it doesn't really work out because it's more following expectations than anything else. Like he thinks he should have a partner, and as a result, his attempts to find one are clunky and don't quite work out. And then when he actually focused on what he wants, he, for the first time in his life, kind of finds a connection with his brother, which they've been trying for many years and it's never worked, and now it works. So I think that's really kind of the thing that really holds this entire movie together.
I'm trying to figure out why, like, what about the events that were taking place didn't work for you guys. Like, I understand, like, cool, I understand, like, he's neurodivergent, so, like, you know what I'm saying, he's very particular about the things that, like, people are neurodivergent. Well, of course, they have different, like, you know, different ways of how they operate and how they do things. However, in terms of Ben Affleck's character, he's very, like, he's very, like, specific and particular with what the things that he does, right? So I understand how it wouldn't make sense to you guys. However, for me, one of the main points that was coming across with this film was he was trying to be normal, and I think they successfully did that. And I get, of course, like we all agree that you know, the relationship dynamic between him and his brother was like was the selling point. It was pretty much the vehicle that was driving the film to, you know, a successful, I wouldn't say successful, but it is what kept the film together, like you said, Daniel. However, for me, I do think him trying to be normal in the world standard of what normal is was also something which works. Now, it wasn't, like I said, it's not a complex storyline. However, it was definitely a theme. No, it was definitely a concept which I think they managed to do pretty well. So I feel like you guys are kind of like being proper, like, I don't want to say nitpicking, but I don't know. Are you guys nitpicking?
Well, hang on. So the whole thing about, like, everybody in this movie starts succeeding when they stop trying to be normal, right? When they accept who they are and they find other people who accept them for that and who may not necessarily similar, but who at least accept them. So that is a large part of this movie. Like when they're in this cowboy bar, right? This Western bar, and Christian kind of learns to square dance because it turns out that something with very repetitive like steps is really up his alley, and so he's really good at it. It's kind of a fun scene. A key part of this movie is people realizing that they don't need to be normal; they just need to find their people, and that is, like, I think we've been saying that that's the part that works. What doesn't work so much is the action and the actual plot itself, because the action is kind of unremarkable, and the plot itself is overly convoluted for what it's trying to do. That's kind of my bottom line.
I don't know about that one, man. I think for me, I think there was a good balance between action sequences and, you know, character-driven aspects of the story. Because obviously, based on Accountant One, so you already know that obviously he's not just the average neurodivergent person, human being. Like he's also a killer at the same time. Like that's his knack. That's his secret weapon. So
yeah, that's the entire premise. And like I've not seen the original, but like the trailer and the presentation makes it obvious enough that that's what this is. And if you haven't figured it out by then, you'll figure it out when the camera kind of pans across his collection of assault rifles in the back of his caravan. Like yes, that's part of the premise, and that's fine. Like that he is this trained mob assassin, and he's really good at that sort of thing. Like that's part of the premise, and like I don't think anybody has a problem with that.
Well, I remember because like Hervé was saying before that, like without the action, like he would have enjoyed it without the action, like if it was just concentrating mainly on, you know, the relationship between the brothers. And I do understand where, because I think well, Daniel, it sounds like you would agree with that as well. Well, I don't actually, no, let me take that back.
No, but for me, it's that aspect of the movie I felt like, you know, was done really well in terms of like I was very invested in it, and I sort of cared about the characters enough, and I cared about the interactions between the characters a lot. It's just that everything else around it just felt very lackluster, and it just everything around it just felt like there wasn't the same amount of effort put into that. Again, with the action scenes, it's not offensive. It's not anything, you know, to be angry about and complain about. If you think about the story and the plot and how it unfolds, like Daniel said, it's a bit convoluted. It's a bit of a mess. There's points in the story where, you know, things are like dragging a little bit. You kind of like, you know, lose sight of what the plot is. J.K. Simmons' character, I'm like questioning as to like why he cared so much about this family. There's like there's so many questions because, you know, in his spiel he says, I only take on cases which, you know, I personally care about or like are personal to me or whatever. And it's like, okay, how is this personal to you? You have Medina, the agent. It's like, why was she working with, you know, these criminals in the first place? I know, like, you know, the accountant's a little bit more of an informant, but, you know, why allow her brother to kind of like his brother to come along on the ride, and sort of like why? And I know she doesn't accept everything that they do, and you know, she eventually kind of, you know, leaves them to sort of to their own devices. But it's just like, if you're a federal agent, how is, you know, how is your first port of call? Where's your partners? Where's the, like the process behind it? It just didn't really make sense, and it just didn't seem like there was like enough. There wasn't enough sort of, you know, idea put behind why these two would end up working together. It just seemed like they just did for the movie to happen, pretty much.
It's because King told her, right? Like
Everything was off.
King is King is her predecessor, and
Yeah.
he said trust the accountant. And when he's found dead, he has a note on somewhere on him. I think he wrote it on his hand that says
Yeah,
find the
yeah.
accountant.
Yeah.
And so that is why the connection happens. I do agree a little bit. Like I don't remember if there's a reason why the rest of the agency stops existing. I don't remember like corruption issues or like a reason for why she has to do this herself.
It was off the books.
But why is it not a normal case?
Okay, that is a good question.
Like the former director of the agency is dead. Why is this not being investigated?
Yeah.
True.
Like you, that would be a very big deal.
Kind of, right? Like if it was something small and maybe too small for the agency or something, and King was investigating it on his own, and like that's the other thing about King. Like that character makes zero sense if you've not seen the first part. Like everything else gets kind of established and they catch you up. With King, he's some guy, right? And then later on, we find out he's the former director of FinCEN and so on. But just his role in the movie, like he's just a guy who's out like doing an investigation, and he has hitmen sent after him, so he hires his own hitman, and it goes bad, and he dies. And that's kind of just the thing that starts the plot. So like that was, I think, because we started with that, like the movie and I got off on the wrong foot because of that, because it didn't sell me on who King was. He was just some guy, right? And he's not even like the old mentor who was like who the hero seeks out for advice or something. Like he basically sets the whole thing in motion, and the movie doesn't tell me who he is. So no, which is like it's a sequel, right? The movie can assume that we saw the first part. I'm just saying everything else gets explained, and then that then leads into Medina, who kind of makes it her mission to solve this because he was a predecessor and I think a mentor as well. So yeah, it's not like complete nonsense, but it's more like it seems a bit strange.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then you then tie it into the hit lady woman, whatever her name is. Well, I can't
That was the
remember.
worst part.
Like her whole deal in this, you know, being the boy's mother and having an accident, reconstructive surgery, this, that, and the other, turn into like some type of hit woman or whatever. Just it just, again, convoluted, didn't really make sense. It was just like too much of a reach. She also stabbed Medina, and he kind of just lets her go without any fight or struggle or anything like that. And then even in the final scene where I'm thinking, okay, like you've been given the location as to where things are going down, you like where your son is or whatever. I'd have thought that even if you're a completely different person, you might show up and like do something. But no, she's in like Korea or Japan or something like that. She's like somewhere completely different. So it's just been like, what was really the point of her character in this? And what it really felt like this movie was doing was a lot of trying to do world building and setting up stuff for the sequel, because for sure she's coming back in the third accountant when they decide to make it. I feel like, you know, she was kind of like left alive, not made the antagonist, but also not given a purpose for her to kind of like maybe show up again at some point. And the overemphasis on this Harvard Academy and making sure that her son was part of this Harvard Academy, a lot of it seemed, and giving them too much agency. And again, this was just like another problem I had with the movie, was that they were just given too much agency over the, you know, over the main character in terms of solving what was going on, in terms of like sort of finding the clues, you know, putting the pieces to the puzzle together, and this, that, and the other. At not like in many scenes, he's just kind of like sat there, you know, kind of reassuring Medina whilst they're just like hacking into everything, and it was just a bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just seemed like they were just like trying to like flesh out the world a little bit more and like add a little bit more. Which there's nothing wrong with it, but it came at the expense of like them focusing on the main character of the movie.
It's like two different things here. Let's say on Anais, the assassin, a little bit. I said earlier, like she was like that. She was the worst part, and the reason I said this is that it's bad form to resolve your plot with a coincidence. You can cause problems with a coincidence. You can start a story with a coincidence. You can't finish one. And here they do it twice. So the first time, like the reason she's involved in this case is because King hired her, right? And apparently there's this assassin app where you say I need an assassin and they assign you one, and Anais gets assigned to him, and that's how she's involved, and that's how they find her, and the Harbor kids find her like in the security cameras because of that, right? And then when what was it, Braxton turns down a hit on Medina, right? And so it gets assigned to the next assassin, which is Anais, and that is how they get together, and that's how their paths cross again. So both of those, as far as I could tell, were coincidences. And I think doing it just once would have been fine because that's how you get the plot rolling. But the second time actually resolves a plot point where they try to find her, and she kind of just walks into their lives again because she's been assigned for this hit, right? Like, or did I miss something? That's how that goes, right?
I agree with what you guys are saying. I think her storyline was pretty. It wasn't the greatest. I would agree.
Well, do we agree that it's a coincidence and they resolve the big problem or the big conflict through a coincidence, or was there another
Sure.
reason why she's assigned to that hit?
Yeah, it was a
Uh,
coincidence, and obviously it was a necessary coincidence because she's similar to what's his name, Ben Affleck's character. That's why I think the only reason why he didn't kill her was because it would have messed up. 'Cause I remember there was a scene where the brother was having a scene was speaking with his manager or the person that assigns him obviously the kills or something, his clientele or whatever. But then he said something about his brother was a madman and stuff like that. I hope you're not with your brother or whatever.
wait, even
I think he did it one. I think he probably one of the reasons, well, two of the reasons was because of she's similar to him, and also it might have messed up what the brother's got going on as well. So that's why I thought.
even the whole aspect of his name, Ben Affleck's character, finding out that there was a hit on Medina, is that Braxton's phone goes off at night, and when he picks up the phone, it's directly on the assassin app, showing that Medina's going to get assassinated, and it's just be like, you couldn't have found a more interesting and more clever way for him to find that out, as opposed to just like
Yeah,
Daniel said, just a coincidence that from the moment that he got the cancelled the contract for the assassination of her, he just never changed what he was looking at on his phone. I don't know. It just didn't make sense. Yeah, it was a bit
so yeah, so it's
lazy.
two coincidences in a row, right? The first is that Anais gets assigned to the job, and the second one is that Christian sees it on the app. Both of those are coincidences. So that screams like we have to end this plot, and we can't think of another way to do it. Right? Like it's just that like I'm not saying the entire movie is bad writing, but that particular plot point is terrible writing. Right? You just can't resolve that
Yeah,
with a
I'm agree.
coincidence. That's just big no. Like that's not how you do it. You can start a problem with a coincidence, but you cannot simply resolve the conflict and have the hero win because of a coincidence.
No, I'm not.
That's just not good writing.
I'm not trying to defend this film. However, aren't most of these movies like that though? Like, isn't this a technique that
Not in that way.
not in that way? Seriously, most of these movies have like just is a coincidental encounter in majority of them.
If they do, it's bad. Shouldn't do it.
A good movie wouldn't do it.
Especially since it's not a small detail, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's like that's what kind of the big finale hinges on, or like the resolution that gets you towards the finale. That's what that hinges on. So it has to be something else. It has to be something that follows from a choice a character makes.
And this is not even that much better, but the whole trope of overhearing a conversation is better than him picking up the phone and it still being on the assassination app showing that Medina is going to get assassinated. It's not that much better, but that is a much better way for him to find out, and it's still contrived, still coincidence. He hasn't done anything to like figure that out, but it's still better, and that kind of just shows you how bad it is for someone to pick up your phone and it just to be on that app and you see it and then you then like go racing down the motorway to try and save this federal agent. It's just
And like 400 kilometers an hour. I think he was pushing over 200 miles an hour. I've gone like 220 kilometers an hour is the fastest I've gone, and that's fast. Like you think your car's falling apart if you go that. If you're going that on a motorcycle, I have my doubts about the physics of that particular scene. Like I don't know how fast these motorcycles can actually go. I doubt they can go like over. It was over 200 miles an hour, right?
Yeah. And the whole time that was happening, I was like, one wrong move, and you are you're like literally a bug on the
one pebble on the road, and you turn into chunky salsa.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
So I mean, it's just silly. Why not make it just fast? Why make it impossibly fast? But okay, not the biggest problem with the movie. But it was like why? It doesn't matter what the number is, right? He gets there when the plot says he gets there. So why make it an impossible number?
Yeah.
It just reduces believability at that point. And it kind of pulls people out and says, yeah, this is like movie nonsense. When it could just be like, this is fast for a motorcycle. Make it, I don't know, 120 miles an hour. That's already really fast for a motorcycle, I think. I don't know. If you're a motorcycle, leave comments below.
If you're a motorcycle.
Yeah. How did we get through this?
Coincidences.
So like, what I was going to say is, if the movie is about finding your people and no longer caring about society's expectations and just being true to yourself, and that allows you to find the people you need to find, why is that not what solves the conflict, right? Like maybe Braxton confides in Christian about the hit he just turned down, and he would not have done this otherwise, but now that he kind of is closer to his brother than he was ever, he feels comfortable doing this, and that is how they win, by trusting each other and confiding in each other. Wouldn't that be a better resolution?
Wait, he didn't.
Like that would at least touch on the core theme, right?
Wait, he didn't do the hit though. I think I might have misheard what you just said.
No, but like he turns down the hit, doesn't tell Christian, and then Christian finds out by chance when Braxton gets another notification on the phone. And what I'm saying is, if the purpose of the story is like finding your people, and that's what they've been doing the entire movie, right? Like they start out estranged and can't stand each other, and then by the end of the movie, they are family, right? By accepting each other for who they are, right? Why is that not how they win? Why is that not what saves the day in the end? And that could have been the case where Braxton says, hey, I just turned down this hit, and my professional code says I shouldn't tell you this, but you're family now. Or I realize now that you're family, and so I have to tell you, because this impacts you. Like, wouldn't that have been a better, like where Braxton has to choose between his professional integrity and his livelihood and his new family? Wouldn't that have been a cool character moment?
Yeah, but they did kind of slightly touch on that. It's just the way that it played out was obviously because before the phone call, Christian did tell him that he was going to go to sleep. So it's not like he could have had time to tell him that, oh, okay, I was given this hit, but I'm not doing it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because as soon as he saw the notification about the hit, I'm saying Christian already left to go and save I forgot her name. So I think they did kind of slightly touch upon that, but it's just your version is better. I do agree, and they should have did it like that way. But yeah, I think they did kind of slightly touch on that.
So the way I remember it is Braxton is offered the hit. He turns it down. And then later at night, he gets another notification saying your hit has been reassigned.
Yeah.
And that is when Christian sees it.
Yeah.
But Braxton never talks to Christian about it.
But that's because Christian was sleeping. Because he did tell him before.
They were both sleeping, yes. But like there's no point at which Braxton approaches Christian about, hey, here's what's going on.
But Braxton didn't know, though. So Braxton didn't know that she was...
He did. Earlier in the day, he turned down the hit. Because of his personal connection to Medina.
He turned down the hit the day that he got the phone call at night. I swear they told him about the hit.
He is offered the hit on Medina, turns it down, and then later on gets another notification that the hit has been reassigned.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the reason why he didn't tell her was because before he got the phone call, oh wait, so you received a notification.
He could have told Christian about it after he turned it down, and he didn't because the professional code is you don't talk about your assignments.
Yeah, no, I thought he was told about the hit when he was on the phone, because before Christian went to sleep and told him, and then I thought he got the hit after that. But I was wrong. He got the hit way before that. Okay, my bad.
There was enough time. Yeah.
Do we want to talk about any? Because I don't think any of us hated the movie. I know we've been
Yeah.
quite critical of the movie, and
You
we've
too.
been quite critical
That'd be
of
cool.
the plot and stuff.
That would be cool.
It's not.
Jonathan's trying his hardest to defend it.
I don't hate the movie. I think there's a whole bunch of little pieces here that are not great and that could have easily been avoided. It's more that the bulk of it is not impressive. I was kind of bored during the action sequences, for example, because it's just okay. Now we're gonna see them shoot some guys and be hyper efficient about it, and it was kind of like parts of that were kind of fun, like when one of them hands the other a magazine, like they are really an old machine. And I'm not entirely sure if they should be considering like haven't spoken to each other for years. Like they're both highly trained, right? But like working as a team like that should require some practice still. I don't know that they had this practice, but okay. But it's like competent action choreography. But my problem was just at no point was I really wowed where I said, "Oh, this is cool. Like this is this is impressive." It's serviceable. It's competent. It gets the job done, and that's kind of it. Like I'm specifically talking about the raid on the traffickers camp to save the children. Seen this 100 times, and they could have easily come up with something more interesting.
So okay. So besides the dynamic between the brothers, wasn't there anything else that you guys liked about this film?
No,
Jesus.
no,
Medina was
no.
okay.
Genuinely, no. Yeah, like everything that I think about the movie that I enjoyed just involves the brothers and involves them interacting. Like when they lure in the pimp that's managing the prostitutes, and they just kind of like knock him over and stuff like that. Like that
I kind of like
like,
that scene.
yeah, like how that plays out is like really cool, really interesting. Even when they're just like chopping it up on sort of the roof of his trailer, and they're just having like a genuine conversation between the two of them, like that, like stuff like that was really good. And then we go back to the plot, and then we go back to the movie, and I'm like, okay, like none of this is great. And like I said, I have nothing against kids and stuff like that, kids that have special needs, but like anytime that they were involved, I didn't like it. And it's just because I don't like the whole hackathon thing where they just like hack to death the whole plot of the movie, and they just hack to death all the answers in a matter of seconds. And
I did like the scene where they need to get the photo. So they find somebody who took a selfie, and Inais is in the background. And so they have to find her and then hack her laptop. And then, but it happens on her screen. And so they have to get her away from the laptop. And so they have the doorbell ring, and they have like the phone ring, and like they mess with the TV volume, like because it's a smart TV and everything is networked. And that was kind of cool, where it wasn't simply about finding the answer, it was also about kind of tricking this person whose laptop they need access to, but they have to distract her. And that was pretty creative. Like I kind of enjoyed that, where they come up with one thing to distract her, and that works, and then she comes back, they have to come up with another thing, and they kind of have to kind of stall her, and they need they need to do 3 or 4 different things. That I like that. That was a cool scene.
I agree. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Daniel, for saying.
I mean, it's not like we've been just trashing this movie. It's more like I think there's a couple of things that keep it from being great.
Yeah.
And I think we've zeroed in on a couple of these things. And it's like, I find it frustrating when a movie is pretty competent. Like, this is not a bad movie. This is not like Snyderian in some way, right? This is a well-made movie. I think Ben Affleck acts well. I think John Bernthal acts well. Everybody does their job, right? Like, it's a competent movie. And then it almost gets there. And I think then it's interesting to kind of investigate, why didn't it go all the way? Like, what was missing? And I think the things we've been talking about are what's missing, at least for me. Where if those things had been better, if there was there's a very clear thematic core in this, but it's not related to the solution, right? It's not related to how the heroes win. And I think that's a screenwriting mistake, where that's what you should do. Like the way your heroes win should tie to kind of the theme or the point of the story. And if it doesn't, then there might be a good reason for that, right? It's not, these things are not one size fits all, but I don't feel like they did something else that was equally good or better. And so, like, this movie is kind of fairly easy to fix if you just isolate like 3 or 4 different points. Like have him actually be an accountant is one, right? He does the accounting thing twice. Like once the literal accounting, and the other time his like super autism. When he rearranges Medina's evidence, right? So, but like that's it. Like in a 132-minute movie, he does it twice, and that's kind of supposed to be his gimmick. And the plot doesn't like it's part of the plot, but it's not the plot is not built around it. Most of it is a pretty standard police procedural from like 2008, and that's not the worst thing. But it's like why could you not lean into your gimmick a little bit more? Not to the point where it becomes like a crutch or something, but where like this story could not have been told with another. Like this could not have been a Jason Statham movie.
But some could argue because, like, for example, with Dune 1 and Dune 2, right? Dune 1 was more political in a sense, whereas Dune 2
Mhm.
was more action packed. So some could argue that's pretty much the same approach that they did with Accountant 1 and Accountant 2.
Dune 2 is a masterpiece. Like, I know Daniel has problems with the ending of Dune 2. We won't get into that in this video, but make a second movie
It's
a
a
masterpiece.
masterpiece outside of the ending, yeah. But no, but
Yeah.
like it's like no, you're absolutely right that a movie series can change its style from one instance to the next. Alien and Aliens is a classic example of this, right? Terminator 1 and 2 is a classic example of this. I do think like a sequel can develop the formula and can turn into something else in the sequel that follows logically on what came before. I'm just not in, like, and that's not nothing illogical about this, right? There's like no point where I say, okay, this does not make sense. Like, I kind of believe that Christian Wolff is who he is. It's more like you've not constructed your story in a way that makes good use of your premise and your gimmick. That's what I'm saying. It's a bit like making a Terminator movie and the Terminator shows up in 2 scenes,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're not leveraging what's cool about your movie and about your franchise.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean it just has to be like super artist, right? Like that. Like I think this actually goes a little bit far in this movie too. But like I'm just saying, why could the plot not have hinged more on auditing the cartel, right? Like so that's what Christian Wolff does really well. And then there's action scenes interspersed in that, but it's more like it's a bigger part of the story.
Mm.
I don't know, just an idea, right? I don't like I'm not rewriting the movie exactly. I'm more saying like it felt a little bit obligatory in the sense that it's an account movie and therefore we have to do it at least once,
Mm.
and so they did. But the story is not built around it, not really.
I see.
The story itself is more generic than it needs to be or should be, maybe.
And the best way they actually used his skills was actually in the dance sequence, because you can tell
Mhm.
this guy's like socially awkward, isn't used to those settings, but recognize the pattern of the dance that we're doing and use that as a sort of crutch to sort of get himself in there, and get himself. And again, that's another cool scene between the brothers,
Mhm.
when they kind of like end up in the bar fight. But so,
First of all, Braxton is really proud of Christian for figuring out the dance. And he's just applauding and says, "Hey, that's my brother. Like, look at him, right?" He's really genuinely happy. And then he's even happier when Christian instigates a brawl because now they have something in common. That's what they're both good at. It was fun. It was a fun scene. And then it cuts to the bar, and then one guy flies out of the window, and then 2 guys fly out of the other window. It was cool.
yeah.
And then they just
So the
drive
movie,
off, and they've had a good time. It's a successful
yeah,
evening out. Like that scene, it's good.
Okay, I think
well
we
summed
should
up.
end up
Yeah.
on that note, on a happy note, on a good note. Unless you guys got anything else where you want to shit on the film, be my guest. Go ahead. All right, guys. Well, last thoughts, please.
I think there's a lot of enjoyable scenes in this. There's a lot of sort of really nice character moments, and again, the things that I care about most when going to see a movie is characters and story. It really delivered on the character front. On the story front, probably not so much. Had some okay action in there. Not one that I will revisit or in a hurry to revisit at all. I don't think there's any kind of like replay value here. In sort of the essence of not every movie needs to be a masterpiece, and not every movie needs to be this sort of work of art, etc. Sometimes you can go and just have a good time in the at the cinema, and I felt like I had that, despite like everything that I've said about the movie, despite sort of all sort of the negatives that we kind of picked out. I think that's kind of what we just do here. We just have to sort of really scrutinize what the movie is, but at the core of it, I feel like it's an enjoyable movie. I feel like you'll have a good enough time with it if you can kind of look past some of the issues that are there in sort of the story and sort of one or two of the characters in this. But yeah, I think to kind of sum it all up, I will give it a 6.5 out of 10.
For me, I think it served its purpose. For me, it was just a thrill, a fun time. Nothing much more to it. I enjoyed the relationship dynamic between the brothers, like I said, and Yeah, man, I'm gonna give you this one a 7. I had a good time. Yeah, of course there were issues with the movie, but those were issues which I was expecting. Like I said, I wasn't expecting the story to be, an award-winning storyline. You know what I'm saying? No, yeah, 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so for me, it's not a bad movie. There are lots of little parts to like. I think it's kind of a little bit moldy at the core, where like the skeleton of the movie should have been something a little bit more imaginative, a little bit less generic, a little bit more compelling. So for me, that's an almost there out of 5.
All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in.
So, yeah, if you made it to this part of the episode, thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for giving us your time. Of course, if you liked everything that you heard today, tell a friend. And if you thought we were just chatting a bunch of nonsense and we were hating too much in the movie, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. We'll catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.